The human species consciousness pool, the human species carries the innate ability to create and to destroy, and every octave of possibility between those two opposite forces. Your species volunteered to do this long before any conceivable origin that we can describe to you. You have the capacity to play any resonance referring to sound or even color energy along the entire gamut of this possibility. And this is why your interface with human populations from other planets, although they are not alive in the sense that you are right now, the communication comes in color, the communication comes in sound, or what you would think of as a melody. The communication comes in symbols. That is a type of language. And the message, if you will, from other humans, although you wouldn't even recognize them as such, is on a scale between these two polar opposites. And of course that scale is vast and indescribable. But basically, just as in other humans, that we immediately can assess here whether they are resonating at an octave more toward good or more toward destruction. And this lecture does want to get into the free will to self-destruct. And you've had several prompts about this lately, about how children who are in the thrall of a destructive circumstance that they cannot manage to mitigate any other way will either turn the darkness that they have observed, that they have absorbed from their caregivers, parents, foster parents, tribe, even genetic ancestral, even local geography, even cultures. The awareness of a child, the sensitivity of a child before it is dulled, can pick up on the widest band of activity of a region from the most local experience of their own household, for lack of a better word, to the community, culture, worldview. So a child, before it is born, also knows of the conditions in your language, for lack of a more comprehensive word, that they are coming into even as a spirit. And so do experience this, or bring, or do have that awareness immediately. Now, it's always a mix. It's always a mix. Every, and we're simplifying this by saying a family, community, society, culture, world. Um, the perception of a child is uh, is feeling the resonance of the circumstances around them when they are born. A child has not developed yet the ego layer that filters and eventually is empowered by free will to participate or interface with these pre-existing conditions at first. This happens, this shell of ego doesn't happen immediately. And so all of these conditions that a child is born into is like a symphony. You know, if you think of the um, deeper tones of music being the darker or more congealed in energy um, tones, if you will, and perhaps the violin as being the most blissful, highest tone. And also in color, of course, the color range of black to white is also this representative of the scale, and every tone in between, every color in between. And we're only using those two as examples right now, um, because this would be accessible to the most people. So as the child sees itself separate from the circumstances around it, is when the child brings forth the quality of free will. it is almost as if the child does not have that capacity or that quality until the ego shell is strong enough for the child to see itself as something different from the circumstances, which doesn't mean that the child didn't feel or have every sensation of reality before. They just did not have developed the ego layer in their mind to be able to begin to say, I want this or I don't want this. And building the ego layer or the ego shell is very gradual in a human. But the age where the ego shell in general is the most complete for the purpose of choosing, enacting deliberate choice is, and this varies because it could be anywhere from the age of 4 to the age of 7 when the shell is what it's going to be. And this doesn't have anything to do with the physical vehicle. The physical vehicle is granted or given at birth. But the ego part of the individual, this shell, this ability to really perceive oneself as different from the people and the environment around it, and begin to make internal choices about or form, let's say, opinions. Although it would seem a toddler has a lot of opinions, they are simply developing the ego shell in the very youngest. It's just the beginning of forming it, because each human being forms an ego shell in each lifetime. They're distinct. They're different. They're for different purposes, let us say. The ego shell is not the origin of free will. Free will is carried within the species consciousness. But the ability to choose and execute free will is a decision of the egoic self. This is a very big topic because individuals come with the desire to express the xylophone, if you will, a certain tone or tenure of the ego, the egoic self. And let me see if I can show this in a better way. It has to do with what is erased from, oh no, it's not what is erased. That's not it at all. Strike that. It's not erased. all of the experiences we carry as we move in our journey of individuation are with us energetically, even as a fetus, even as a baby. Even if the egoic self is very different from culture to culture, from the egoic self can also be um, I don't know quite how. I know what they're showing me. Like, say a child is born with spina bifida, or I can't think of another, perhaps the gene of what we call mongoloid. There may be a different name for this now. The physical vehicle that one is born into may um, in a dance of the self-knowingness in each lifetime, modify the egoic self simply from a physical point of view, simply from physical attributes. In the case of children who are born or develop very young, what you would consider handicaps or not normal physical expression. And so choice might be limited. Uh, and their egoic layer or shell may have a interaction or effect because of physicality. Yeah, that's I know I get what they're saying, but it's going to be a little hard to describe that in a politically correct way. I was thinking, and I guess there is some sort of exchange here. We can put the pause on tape. But I had the thought of my idea of heaven as being a blade of grass near the most beautiful watershed that I know, and experiencing the life and the seasons um, as the even as the ice forms, as the ice melts, as the creatures come and go, as the days come and go, as the clouds come and go, as the seasons come and go. I don't know whether this is a memory I have or my idea of heaven that I want to have, because I would really like to be not human. And as some may see that as going backwards in evolution, but I don't. With awareness and individuality, I would love to experience the natural world from the inside as not human. Anyway, that's a little aside. I'm not sure I'm even going to record that. But if I did that, I would not have free will. I would not be carrying this ability to create and destroy. I would simply be. I would I would simply exist following the blueprint of a blade of grass, a reed next to a beautiful watershed, in community as part of the ecosystem that existed there without free will. I don't know whether we can move from complexity, the complexity of being this species, to an experience of a less complex. I don't know if we can bring our individuality and awareness to a less complex species. But let's keep going on free will. Because as a blade of grass, I would not have free will. I could not move. I could not make choices. I could only experience. If there was an I that could even record that experience. So, okay, I want to get back to free will. And so, this quality of free will is also tempered, if you will, by certain patterns experience that a baby has brought in with it, even though there is no immediate awareness of that. And as you know, the choices can be made out of awareness or out of ignorance. Oh, and what they're saying is even in a flawed physical body, a flawed physical mind, there may be a level of choice that is endowed from prior experiences with the individual. The individual may suffer more or less and suffering is that is a judgment. That is a even the word suffering is cannot be known. It is too subjective of an experience to be evaluated in an objective way, because as you know, in the experience of great pain or suffering, the awareness can completely leave the physicality and not be experienced in the way a subjective observer might think. For example, this missing little girl in New Hampshire that has really gained everyone's attention and prayers, and she really did not experience what she experienced. She was taken up with the angels before she experienced that. But let's get back into the xylophone, the resonance of positive and negative. And this is very, very complicated because you yourself have experienced very close to the darkest. You call them the rungs of hell, but you have experienced from a pretty devoid of light experience all the way to a and again, this sounds like judgment, but it isn't. It's just a matter of light, or the absence of light is a way to think about this. And in this lifetime, you have experienced a great range of things already. We have to be reminded pretty much in each lifetime that of the possibilities that are available for us to choose from. But at some point, we do choose. We are able to choose where in the scale, if you will, of dark to light we will participate in. And that choice is made over and over by executing our free will in many levels. It isn't just physical, it's mental, it's emotional. It's the choice of the entire dynamic of the individual human. And these choices are made constantly, whether to experience something closer to the light end of the scale or something closer to the darker end of the scale. And many people experience great pain and great darkness as a mechanism to make different choices. But ultimately, it is only the choice that matters, not the experience. It is the choice within the experience that matters. And you have other information on this. Now, when we speak of free will, every human is in we don't really want to use the word matrix, but I guess, and web in terms of very intricate lines of energy of the people, circumstances, event, even the weather, everything you experience, you have to exert free will over. Every decision of thought, every decision of emotion is going to be somewhere along that scale of light to dark. Now, it's very helpful when an individual has practiced this skill of self-awareness in other lifetimes. But it is redeveloped to some extent every single lifetime. So, for example, they're pointing out, I know of a baby who is very much wanted and very much loved and is just being brought up with love and confidence and is a very, very happy child. But even this happy child is going to ultimately have to make choices constantly as the ego eventually develops enough to into self-awareness to choose. And the choices possible for free will to experience all the possibilities along the range of light to dark can be so subtle, so um, can be so subtle every day. As you know yourself, in the morning, you choose to rejoice at having a day. You choose to rejoice at your soft bed, at your animal companions, your um, your partnerships, your friends, the light, the weather, no matter what it is. And in this rejoicing, first thing in the morning, you have already slid your perceptions to a scale of light instead of the scale of, um, perhaps anger, despair, sadness, self-pity, blame. I mean, there's many different um, possibilities along the tonal or light um, um, axis, AXIS, for your experience. And this is what you call wisdom. When you execute your free will to choose even awareness of your actions, even something that might seem difficult or dark, for example, euthanizing a pet, making that decision when it's time to euthanize another being. Um, it is in the intention of the action, which may seem dark but is actually very light along the scale. Um, yes, the grief causes us to slide down back more to the gray scale, but the gratitude for their life moves that moves us in the sliding up to the light. And it's not as simple as just one experience, obviously, because as you move through your day, you have many different times to make choices, to execute your free will. And so, free will has always been identified with your master teachers as being um, the endowment of humans over, uh, not over, but as different or separate from other species. Now, there are other species throughout the universe that carry this quality that are not human. Um, but in your realm of experience here, um, for all intents and purposes, there's no point in there's no point in going there. But this law of opposites does have to exist, as you know, because it's the engine, it's the fuel for um, movement in the universe. And I guess we'll go over that a little bit more right now. the universe is propelled, evolution is propelled from anywhere origin, source, creator blooms into any permutation of itself, any expression of itself. This is fueled by opposites. It is the engine. Think of a piston moving up and down. It moves from one location to the other. There's so many examples of this, but it is a natural law that propels existence. So, and it's also the natural law. You think of this as only source creator blossoming into experience, but the opposites are the way that creator source is also drawn back into itself. So it works in both ways. I mean, we think that and you can't understand this. There are not words for this. To be able to return to source, to be able to merge your individuality into your individual expression in the journey back toward creator source, in the absorption of your experience into all that is. There still is our choice points, and that so even as you ascend, free will is still in play until you are beyond your species choice, which is beyond your comprehension as an individual. But you have other material on this. Other energies participate in they do have a scale of experience too. As you're watching your squirrels eating your birdseed and your birds eating your birdseed, it's extremely cold outside, and yet they are adapted to find the food which you provide. so if you think about it in their experience, their feet might be very cold, and yet you're watching two of them sort of play right now because they have found food. Now, was free will part of that? It might appear so, but not to the yes, there are choices, but the blueprint of every other thing, including the earth, is not to destroy. The blueprint of every other being that you perceive here is not able to make a deliberate choice to destroy. And getting back to the euthanasia of a pet, that may or may not be destructive depending on the intention. If the intent is to simply get rid of an animal that is unwanted, that may be lower on the scale of getting of euthanizing a beloved pet at the end of its life. So, so this the and it's not morality. It's not morality. Free will has only to do with participating in universe and then participating in the journey of expression out from source origin and back. And this, you've interpreted this as morality, but it's much more self-serving than that. Now, I think the morality is how we are taught what feels good and what does not feel good within ourselves. This is what uh, the religions are about. In the purest sense, it's not just about grifting for money, but it's about showing humans what feels better, love or fear. But if a child or a young adult has never been demonstrated or modeled love, then they stay in a fearful state and will make choices based on that fear, which doesn't give them a very good individual experience. It doesn't make them feel good. And then there are individuals who may have never been shown anything but fear, but at some point they intersect with love and something that's different in their experience, and know that that is more light filled, more moving up the scale of their experience. And so begin to choose that, in their free will. So we must never judge one's experience. We must never judge. We must always consider every experience a human is having with love. And not judging what their experience is. Now, I had a question on how we turn this, and I just keep being shown a slide rule, and a slide rule, uh, it's I've got to find the right little tool, because if you had a ruler that didn't have any marks on it and that just had a color range of white to black and every color in between, or you had a musical scale that played very discordant music all the way up to incredibly uplifting music, and you could slide a some sort of moving um, something that was attached to this, moving back and forth along this bar, or rectangular, if you could think of it as a ruler type in scale. Many times when a human is trying to express the brighter colors or positive emotions, or brighter color tones within themselves, within their auric field, within their energy bodies, within their physical bodies, it takes a lot of experience for them in their turning inward to assess if they are um, using the creative destructive slide rule, let us say, on themselves internally. They may have no instinct to harm each other, but because the awareness of how they are applying the law of opposites within their own psyche, which is much more subtle, which comes in the choice of what to think, of what to feel. This takes a lot longer to become aware of. But it all comes down to emotion, feeling good about yourself or feeling bad about yourself. And in a general sense, this is love of self, which is often taught as inappropriate, but yet is the only measure we have to move our internal reality on the slide rule more to the positive or to the negative. To be able to make choices about what we think, no matter what is going on around us, no matter what we are experiencing, no matter, what physical pain we may be feeling, no matter, we can always manage to reach for a slightly better thought, which resonates into a slightly better feeling. But this internal, it's almost like a different world. We have the world outside of us and we have the world inside of us, inside of awareness, and as opposed to our external awareness. And so the choices of the constructive or destructive applies to both. And this is why we must never judge, because we never have any idea of what the internal experience of somebody who is doing very destructive acts might be. So the word suffering just came up. So can we link, is there a link between suffering and free will? You can always choose to slide the scale to a slightly, sometimes, am I channeling or am I making this up? Yeah, this is not part of this meditation. So it's really very simple. And even though imagining this as a ruler or slide in your mind seems an objective image, it is very subjective. But there is something here. There is something here, I believe, about the light workers and how we are trying to hold a vision of a better way of being here on this planet. And then the people who are abiding in fear can only see fear. So a loving person is only seen through the lens of fear by another individual. And until everybody, not everybody, but more, they say the tipping point, until more of us see love and not fear as in the human potential, as the human potential. Massive shifts here in this very dense expression will continue. The massive shifts. This is a little bit getting into the collective, but what each of us decide as an individual does contribute to what you are calling the field or the collective. On a very personal sense, there is the experience of the sliding scale and always trying to, as an individual, be the best we can, or slide it to what feels better, love or fear. In a community sense, the individuals are expressing love or fear. In a societal sense, the individual is expressing love or fear. In the world sense, our individual choices express either love or fear. It's really that simple. But the individual choices collect or drive. Not drive. Because I've been told that there are some beings that never return to source because of the darkness that is expressed. Oh, there was something getting back to when the ETs who are here really show us who they are. They are of more evolved races than we are. And so we can assume that they have the best interest at heart, even though there will be people who use this to beat the drum of fear, and there will be people to use the appearance of the ETs to beat the drum of love. Interesting. That even that experience will have personal and collective choice of how to slide this ruler. This I've got to really work on how I'm going to present that. And so my angel guide walks me back to the pearly gate And she hugs me. I don't know who this is. We don't have to worry about masks up here. And I'm experiencing the kind of pure love that is possible without a human body. Which makes me wonder if even up here, if people who are biting in fear have a very diminished experience of themselves, even here. But I think that's for another time.